everyone, my name is Eddie and this is the Start Space Gaming channel on YouTube, and today I'm going to be starting my top 100 favorite games of all time. This is going to be a list split up into videos of 10 at a time. This first episode is going to be numbers 100 through 91, and some of you might be asking why we would do a top 100 list as one of our first videos on the channel. See, I think that it's very important for people to understand what a reviewer's biases are, the sort of games they like, the sort of games that they don't like, so that they can get a sort of gauge the level of how you view their reviews. If I particularly like a certain kind of game that you don't very much like, then you can take my review of that game with a grain of salt, I guess. So that's where I'm coming from with doing this list early, is to hopefully give everyone who's watching this new channel that we're doing, where we're going to be doing reviews, an idea into what kind of games I like and the kind of games I don't like. So I hope everyone enjoys this list. One thing that I'm going to be doing that I hope will be fun for some of you at least, is before every game I'm going to give a short little 1 to 2 sentence clue as to what the game is. And I won't pause for very long, but if you want to pause the video, then you can maybe try to guess the game before it comes up. So, before long, let's get on to number 100. An underrated Cthulhu game, innovative gameplay hindered by a complicated setup. My number 100 game of all time is Mansions of Madness. Mansions of Madness is a game that's flown under the radar. I sort of heard about it when I started playing games, but even back then it wasn't a huge name. But it was before, I think, the huge flood of Cthulhu games, and now that we have so many Cthulhu games, this one's really sort of disappeared. And there's a couple of reasons why I think that's happened, but I like it so much because of everything innovative it does that I don't really get in other games. Mansions of Madness is a dungeon crawling game where one player plays as the overlord, the evil player controlling all of the bad guys, and the other players control investigators who are going into a situation trying to solve a mystery. So, for instance, there might be someone disappeared at a mansion. So the investigators are going into this mansion trying to find clues about where that person went, and the overlord is trying to hinder their investigation. And it does this through really interesting ways. So there's combat in the game, but combat's not really the main focus. It's a pretty big deal, but it's not the main focus. Really what they're trying to do, the investigators, is they're trying to go into these rooms and they are trying to find, go through these decks of cards to find clues as to where the next clue is. And once they find all the clues, they can find what happened in this specific case. There's also these really interesting puzzles that come up that are actual puzzles that are outside the game, where there are tiles in the game that are just these puzzles, like wire puzzles, where the investigators have to rotate the tiles to make the right wire lead from this point to this point. Really interesting stuff that's not seen in a lot of other games, but the one thing that really does hinder it from coming out more often for me is the complicated setup. The person playing the Overlord is in charge of setting up all these rooms, all these tiles, all these cards in these rooms, and it's very, very important that they do that right. Because if one thing is wrong, the game can be impossible to win, or can be super unfair one way or the other. So that's a bit time-consuming for one thing. It takes a long time to set the game up, but then also nerve-wracking as the Overlord trying to set everything up correctly. But besides all of that, I really enjoy Mansions of Madness as a game that does things that not a lot of other games do. That's why it's my number 100. My number 99 favorite game of all time is one that's a thematically intense game that's equal parts puzzle and history lesson. My number 99 favorite game is Freedom, the Underground Railroad. So, the theme of this one can be a huge turnoff for some people. We play games to have fun largely, and this theme of slavery in America is not a very fun theme, but it is an extremely engaging one. Academy Games does a really good job of researching their games, of finding the historical background, and putting it into their game. So as you're playing this, you're reading cards that are based on real people and real events. They come up at roughly the time period that they would have happened in actual history. You sort of get a feeling of, not necessarily, it doesn't go I wouldn't go as far as saying you get a feeling for living in this time or anything like that, but you definitely get a feeling of the sort of struggles that abolitionists had to go through to save people from the South. This is a very, very well-regarded game, but one that's almost looked at as more of a history lesson or more of a impressive achievement in game storytelling than anything else. But even as a straightforward game, this game is very fun, very puzzly. If you like Pandemic, if you like other co-op games such as that, Freedom the Underground Railroad really hits on that level as well. And that's why it's my number 99 favorite game of all time, Freedom the Underground Railroad. In at number 98, we have great artwork in this programmed movement style Euro game that doesn't enjoy the same popularity as its card game cousin. My number 98 favorite game of all time is Lords of Ziddit. A really underappreciated game, underrated, I think. Not one that gets talked about a lot. I've seen it in a few clearance deals, even. But this is a really interesting game because I don't have a lot of programmed movement style games, a lot of programmed action games, and this one does it in a really fun and interesting way, where every turn players have these dials. It's a little board with, I think, 4 different dials in it. And you use those 4 dials to choose your 4 actions for the turn. And your actions can be moving, they can be activating a space. You're going around collecting adventurers and then using those adventurers to defeat monsters. But it has a lot of interaction with players as well, where you can try to program your actions to take advantage of what your opponents are doing. So say you think, okay, this player is going to come to this space first, and they're going to take the less valuable adventurer. So if I make sure that I get there after them, then I can take advantage of the fact that they took a guy to then take a better guy. But then do they double think you? Do they wait a turn so that you take the guy? There's a lot of back and forth interaction in a Euro game, which I really appreciate. I really like Euro games where there is a lot of player interaction. And this game does that very well with the programmed movement. And again, not a mechanism that I get to play a lot, but this one has probably my favorite instance of it. My number 98, Lords of Ziddit. In numbers 97, I have a short clue for you because I feel like giving too much away would make it too easy. Number 97, a quick-playing dice version of a co-op classic. My number 97 favorite game of all time is Pandemic: The Cure. Pandemic: The Cure beats out regular Pandemic for me. I think it's controversial to say. I don't know that a lot of people have that opinion. But I will say, Pandemic actually made my number 102. So just barely missed the list, and very close to Pandemic: The Cure in the scheme of things, only about 5 spaces separating them. I really, really enjoy this game because it's a faster version of Pandemic. I like Pandemic. Obviously, I like it a lot. But having a quicker playing version of it that gives me the same sort of feeling, the feeling of solving a puzzle with friends, everyone taking advantage of their special abilities to move around the map, to do things that no one else can do. Everything about that I get in Pandemic: The Cure, which is a faster playing version. I do like dice. The components in this are really very nice. And that's why it just barely beats out regular Pandemic for me. And makes my number 97, Pandemic: The Cure. At number 96, we have an innovative take on dungeon delving, made better with a variant. My number 96 favorite game of all time is Thunderstone Advance. Thunderstone Advance is a dungeon crawling game. It really is. Yeah, you're building a team of adventurers, you are going into a dungeon and defeating monsters to hopefully defeat the most points worth of monsters and be the greatest adventuring team among all the players. But the innovative part of this comes in with the fact that it is a pure deck building game. I believe the original Thunderstone came out very close on the heels of Dominion. It has a lot of the same sort of ideas of Dominion, but with this dungeon delving theme, and it really does work. The variant that I'm talking about is the Epic variant that is now included in the rulebook, wherein in normal Thunderstone, you have just a basic setup. It's like Dominion. You have a certain number of cards in the town, and those are the cards that you can buy from. There's like 3 or 4 piles of adventurers, 3 or 4 piles of weapons, and everyone is buying those same adventurers and same weapons throughout the game. In the Epic variant, you mix everything together. All of the heroes are mixed together and made into like 3 stacks that are random stacks. Same thing with weapons and items and villagers. So what that does is it makes the game very customizable. It makes it so that when you're playing, your team of adventurers, your deck, is going to be very different than anyone else's. And that's what makes it really, really fun. If you play by the normal rules, then it sort of ends up with everyone being the same, because maybe there's one group of adventurers that's really good and everyone's going to try to buy all of them. So you all end up being around the same kind of adventurer. And that sort of makes the game fizzle, especially because this is a bit of a longer game, can be. So without the sort of customizability and uniqueness that you get out of the Epic variant, I don't think it really stands up to that time investment. But with the Epic variant, this game is amazing fun. You really do feel like you're getting this dungeon crawl experience, but from a card game. Love the ability to level up adventurers, love the ability to get a familiar. So much going on, but just a very fun, clean deck builder. Thunderstone Advanced, my number 96. My number 95 is a stark and beautiful abstract that's the most popular in its well-known series. In at number 95, we have Yinch. Yinch is a beautiful game, like most abstract games are. They have to be beautiful because they want you to leave them set up on a coffee table. They want them to be centerpieces for conversation. Yinch is an amazingly good-looking game. The stones, the rings, everything just looks great. Black and white. The board itself looks amazing. The gameplay is where it really stands out, though. I'm not a huge fan of abstract games. I think I've got maybe 2 or 3 on my list total. But Yinch is one of them that really has stuck with me. And that is because it is such simplistic gameplay that really makes you feel like you're doing something, I guess is the way that I would describe it. I'm not very good at the game. That's for sure. Like, I'm not good at Yinch, but playing it is really fun. What you're doing is each player has these rings on the board, and every turn you place a stone into one of your rings and then jump it. If you jump over other stones, those stones will flip from black to white or from white to black, and you're trying to get stones of your color in a row, 5 in a row. If you manage to do that, those stones come off the board, and you lose one of your rings. And the first person to, I think, do that 3 times wins the game. So there's an amazing balance where every time you finish a row of stones, you lose a ring. And you need rings to move around, you need rings to jump with, so you're hurting yourself to get a point, essentially. So as the game goes on, if one person is really dominating and manages to get 2 rows completed in a row, then they've lost 2 rings. So they are down 2 potential moves to my still having all of my rings. So I have way more mobility than they do. It might be easier for me to undo their plans. I can make it way harder for them to get that last row. Very, very interesting game. Very thinky game for sure. And as an abstract game, there's not many that I could recommend above Yinch if you're interested in a new abstract game that does something different than chess or checkers or Go. These other games you might have played, does something different, is a new abstract game that I think is going to be around for a long time just because of the simplicity and the complexity of its gameplay. That is Yinch, my number 95. At number 94, we have a social deduction game that plays very quickly and never gets dull by the end. My number 94 is Good Cop, Bad Cop. So, social deduction games have gotten sort of worn out for me as I've played them more and more. Games like The Resistance always seem to end in the same sort of shouting matches. Once someone's found out, their game is done. Good Cop, Bad Cop sort of fixes that with an innovative system where you have 3 cards face down that are your role cards, and whichever one you have the most of, that's the team that you're on. So if you have 2 crooked cards and 1 honest card, then you're on the crooked cop team. But there's also this Kingpin and Special Agent card. If you have one of those, you are on that team no matter what, and you are the leader of that team, and it's the goal of a team to eliminate their other team's leader. Very interesting because as you're looking at cards, you can look at a card and not know for sure what team someone's on. You are pointing these guns at each other, trying to take out the other team's leader. But these equipment cards are what add this real element of chaos to the game that makes it this high on my list. Equipment cards that can change people's loyalty cards around. I've seen so many games where someone's about to get the last shot on the Kingpin, and someone plays an equipment card that changes their loyalty around, and now they're crooked. Now they want the Kingpin to live. So that shot they're not going to take, and the game just gets turned on its head at the last moment. That's the sort of stuff that I really enjoy about Good Cop, Bad Cop, and that makes it my number 94. My number 93 is a Jenga killer and kids game that adults can enjoy as well. At number 93 we have Rhino Hero. Rhino Hero is straight up dexterity game. I can't say a lot about it because there's not a lot to the game. You have these cards that you're stacking to make a tower. There's a little wooden rhino that occasionally you'll have to pull off the tower and push him to the top as carefully as you can. If the tower falls over, you lose, and whoever has the least cards in their hand wins the game. It's as simple as that. The cards, you wouldn't think they could stack very high, but they really can. This tower can get high if people are good at the game. it just is straight up fun. Really a Jenga killer in the same family. You never really play Jenga as a whole night sort of thing. It's something you do while you're doing something else. It's something you do to kill time. Rhino Hero can do all of that and better. I really, really enjoy this game, enough so that it makes number 93 on my list. Rhino Hero. My number 92 is a notoriously hard co-op game with a mythical theme that has gotten more and more popular in recent years. In at number 92 we have Yggdrasil. So, Yggdrasil has the Viking theme, which has gotten more and more games made of it recently. In Yggdrasil, you are playing cooperatively to protect Asgard, to protect Yggdrasil from these various Norse mythological creatures. And this game really does what co-ops should do. It does it very well. For one thing, it's extremely hard. There's a lot of enemies coming at you that are difficult to kill. There's randomness involved in whether you can kill them or not, which can be a problem for a lot of people, but it's the interesting thing about mitigating randomness where you're trying to mitigate it, but you can't spend too much time making it a sure thing, or you will lose in other areas. This game is extremely hard, but it never feels totally unfair. At the end of games, even when we've lost, we've always felt like if we had just done a little bit better, we could have won. And that's what makes a great co-op game stick around for a long time, is that combination of difficulty, but beatability, or not feeling unfair, I guess is the way that I would put it. And Yggdrasil really walks that line very well. One of the co-op games that I definitely will keep playing throughout the years because it has that really good balance. And the character abilities all work together very well. The different areas in the map you can go to, people are sort of, it's always a very hard decision what you're going to do on your turn. And that's one of the things that I love about Yggdrasil, my number 92. And finally, we have an abstract war game that's recently got a new edition and plays much better at 2 than with more. My number 91 favorite game of all time is Ashima Hex. Ashima Hex is an abstract game at heart. It really is. There's not much you can say against that. You're placing these tiles on the board, sort of trying to aim at your opponent's base. Whoever can kill the opponent's base first will win. And once the board fills up with tiles, or when someone plays a battle tile, then everything pops. The battle happens, and the combat's deterministic. There's no dice rolling. It's just a matter of do you do damage or don't you? And you continue going until someone's won. It's very, I keep going back to the word abstract, and I can't think of any other word to use for it, but that deterministic combat, that tile placement, there's a lot of strategy going on as well, as you place people in positions that you think are going to benefit you the best and not leave openings for your opponent to take over. Tons of tension, especially in the later game, as you see like your opponent has a very good position and you really don't want them to draw a battle tile this turn, because if they do, they're going to start the battle and they're just going to decimate you. I love that there are different armies. Even in the base box, there are 4 different armies that you can play as, and they all feel very different. That definitely is what makes it takes it away from being a pure abstract game. The differences in these armies, the differences in the way that they play. One army has a lot of mobile characters. Normally you can't move characters, but this army can. An army with a ton of heavy hitters, an army with a lot of long range. Especially if you start getting into the expansions, there's armies that are like, there's this one army that has these plants that can sort of spread a root system throughout the board. Super interesting. I have the older edition. The newer edition doesn't change a whole lot as far as the gameplay, but does update the visuals, and I think sort of tweak the abilities a little bit. But I definitely enjoy this game and recommend it, especially as a 2-player game. It does work okay with more, but at 2 it's really best. And you can also get boards that are specific for 2 players. Definitely recommend this game if you haven't tried it yet. My number 91 favorite of all time, Ashima Hex. Well, everyone, that's it for this block in my top 100, the first 10 of my top 100 favorite games of all time. I hope you enjoyed seeing these games and get my input on them. A little bit of an eclectic list, but I think this whole list is going to be pretty eclectic. As we go through, you'll see that I like a lot of different kinds of games, from co-ops to heavy Euro games. So I hope you enjoyed this, and until next time, see you later.